Coming Home. Written by Ink in My Heart and on the Page. And read by Eleanor Elizabeth. Chapter 4. Part 4. "Peter, are you sick or something?" Ned asked, his voice slightly tinny over Peter's cracked phone. "You didn't answer my text last night about the Lego Death Star, and you weren't at school today." "Ned, you're not going to believe the past 24 hours I've had," Peter moaned, falling back onto the soft mattress. He stared up at the pristine white ceiling of his new bedroom, in the Avengers Tower. He was still trying to wrap his head around the fact that this was going to be his home. "Dude, is it Spider-Man stuff?" Ned gasped. "Are you hurt? Is that why you didn't come in?" "No, Ned, this isn't Spider-Man related," Peter said. "Remember how we had our fingerprints taken the other day?" Yeah, that's pretty hard to forget. I still have ink on my fingers," Ned said. "Yeah, well, my fingerprints were already in the system," Peter said. "Ned, the FBI were waiting at the apartment for me and May." "Dude, what?" Ned gasped. "The FBI were at your apartment? Were you arrested?" "No," Peter shook his head. "But they had some pretty life-changing news for me." "Like, bitten by a radioactive spider life-changing?" Ned asked. "Yeah, pretty much." Peter let out a breath. "I was kidnapped as a baby. My parents weren't actually my parents." The silence on the other end of the phone was heavy, and Peter hummed at the lack of response. "Yeah." "You're gonna have to explain from the beginning." Peter did. In great detail, he explained the past 24 hours to his best friend, how Tony and Pepper Stark were his real parents, and that he'd been stolen from them as a toddler, and it was only now that the truth had come out. "And now I'm at the tower," Peter finished his explanation. He felt emotionally drained. He felt himself melt further into the mattress. "Peter, what even is your life?" Ned asked. This is unbelievable. Tony Stark, Iron Man, is actually your dad?" A giddy smile stretched across Peter's face. "I know." "Does he know that you're Spider-Man?" Ned asked. Peter heaved himself up and scooted backwards on his bed until he hit his pillows. "What? No, he doesn't know." "Oh, are you gonna tell him?" "No. Maybe. I don't know," Peter groaned. "It's just a lot to take in at the moment. I mean, May doesn't even know." "True," Ned agreed. "Where are you now?" "I'm in my room." Peter glanced around the room. It was much bigger than his room back in Queens. It was pretty empty at the moment, but Pepper had assured him that he could decorate it in any way that he wanted, and that together they could go out shopping for anything he might need. After arriving at the Avengers Tower, Friday had taken them to the higher levels of the tower, to the Starks' own personal floor. "Technically, the whole building is ours," Tony had explained with a wink, "but this is our personal floor. Nobody but Pepper and I have access to it. And now you, of course." "Friday needs verbal permission from Tony or me for anyone to access this floor," Pepper had smiled. "The rest of the floors are taken up by the Avengers and the Stark Industries New York offices." The elevator had opened up into a large living area that was bigger than his and May's whole apartment, and the view that you could see from the floor-to-ceiling windows was something that Peter would never forget. Tony and Pepper had given them a tour of the floor, and Peter had to admit his favourite part of their floor had been Tony's personal lab. It took up nearly the whole west side of the floor and had more tools than Peter could ever dream of. Pepper and May had to drag the two of them out of there, promising that tomorrow they could spend time there, something that Peter was greatly looking forward to. They had spent the afternoon going through all the pictures they had of Peter as a baby, sharing stories of the childhood he had no memory of, before having an early dinner and Peter calling it a day. "You have a room?" Ned gasped. "That is so awesome." "Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm going to be living here?" Peter picked at the comforter. "Oh, yeah, I guess you will be," Ned said. "Will you still come to school?" "Yeah, of course," Peter said. I mean, not for the rest of the week. This is a lot to get my head around. No shit, Ned said. Hey, do you think I could come over on the weekend? I think so. I'd have to ask, Peter frowned. Awesome, Ned said. Oh, I have to go, but I'll call you after school tomorrow? Oh, yeah, okay. That would be awesome. Bye, Ned, Peter said. Bye, dude. They hung up, and Peter sunk back against the pillows of his new bed. He rolled over and connected his phone to his charging cord before he scooted himself under the covers and flopped around until he was comfortable. He thought it would take him a while to fall asleep, with the amount of thoughts running through his head, but as soon as he closed his eyes, he was out. Can I get you another drink? Pepper asked May, nodding her head at the empty wine glass. No, thank you. May shook her head. I think I'm going to head to bed myself. It's been a big day. Tony snorted. You could say that. I'll see you in the morning. May stood to her feet, brushing her hair back from her face. Thank you again for letting me stay. Pepper smiled. Sleep well. As May left the room and headed towards the spare guest room, Tony slumped against the couch and closed his eyes. He heard Pepper shift closer to him, and soon her fingers were brushing through his hair. You okay? Pepper asked, her voice quiet. I can't believe he's here, Tony said. He blinked open his eyes and stared at his wife. He's actually here. I know. Pepper smiled brightly. It feels like a dream. Tony snaked an arm around Pepper's waist, toying with the side of the shirt she wore. He looks like me. He does, Pepper hummed. He's adorable. I knew he would grow up to be handsome, but I mean, he's just so cute. Tony choked on laughter. He's got our humor. I can't believe he got me with that date loaf. Pepper laughed loudly. Your face. Yeah, laugh it up, Tony grumbled. I took one for the team. So brave, Pepper cooed, and pressed a quick kiss on his temple. Our baby's home. Tony's breath stuttered out of him. Yeah, he is. Boss, sorry to interrupt, Friday said. Rhodey is asking permission to enter your floor. Is he alone? Tony asked. Yes, boss. Let him in. Tony grunted as he sat up properly. He smiled at Pepper, capturing her lips in a gentle kiss. Oh, should I come back later? Rhodey's grin was audible, and Tony pulled away from Pepper. Grinning at his best friend, Tony winked at him from over the couch. You could always find another room. Rolling his eyes, Rhodey crossed the room and joined the two of them on the couch. All right, fill me in. How the hell did you find Peter? It was a fluke, Tony shook his head. The kid's school did some sort of fingerprinting, and when they ran his through the system, it got flagged. Fingerprinting at school, Rhodey repeated. Out of all the resources we've used to find him, and he gets fingerprinted at school. Yeah, Tony huffed. Tell me about it. Is he okay? Rhodey asked, his eyes darting between the two parents. He's fine, Pepper assured their friend. He's a normal, healthy teenage boy. Thank God. Rhodey leaned back against the couch heavily. I was so worried that... He trailed off, not wanting to voice the words that they had all thought of in the past. That Peter could have been abused by those who'd taken him. I'm glad he's okay. You and me both, Tony grunted. Where has he been? Rhodey asked. Would you believe he's been in Queens this entire time? Tony quirked an eyebrow. Rhodey looked between Pepper and Tony, looking for any signs that they were joking. You're kidding me. Queens. He's been that close this whole time? He's been living with who they thought was his aunt, May Parker, Pepper explained. Who the hell is May Parker? Rhodey demanded. Keep your voice down, Tony shushed his friend. She's actually here, in the guest room. You brought your kid's kidnapper to the tower and gave her the guest room? Rhodey asked, deadpanned. You've officially lost it. May wasn't the kidnapper, Pepper sighed. No, that title goes to Richard and Mary Parker, Tony growled. Both who are dead, by the way. Plane crash. Peter went to live with who they thought was his aunt and uncle. Jesus, Rhodey breathed. May had no idea that her brother and sister-in-law had kidnapped Peter, Pepper said. She's been really good about the whole thing. Do you know why they kidnapped him? Rhodey asked. Friday is running their names as we speak, Tony said. She should have everything she can find on them soon. The FBI are doing their own search, of course. S.H.I.E.L.D. can search for them too, Rhodey said. I'm sure Fury can dig something up on them. My theory is money. Tony scrubbed a hand over his face again. Obi probably paid them off. Rhodey reached out and gently patted his friend's shoulder. You got your son back, safe and alive. That's what you should be focusing on right now. Yeah. Tony nodded at his friend. Now, tell me you have a picture of my nephew. Rhodey clasped his hands together. I want to see if he got Pepper's good looks. Tony squawked as Pepper laughed and said, Friday, please bring up an image of Peter. Friday projected an image of Peter onto the TV screen. It was a picture of him in Tony's lab, looking wide-eyed and a smile of utter disbelief and awe on his face. Rhodey leaned forward, a hand coming up to cover his mouth as he stared. Damn, he finally muttered. You got your looks, Tony. Tony shoved Rhodey, nearly knocking him off the couch. You're demoted. Pfft, as if, Rhodey scoffed. He's adorable. Isn't he? Pepper smiled. Want to re-meet him in the morning? Absolutely, Rhodey nodded. Nothing could stop me. Pepper stood up, stretching. I'm going to go to bed. Don't stay up too late, please. I'll be there soon, Tony assured her. Night, Pep, Rhodey said. How did the meeting go? Tony asked as Pepper had left the room. He adjusted himself on the couch, turning his body to face Rhodey, eyes flicking to the image of Peter every so often. Fury wants us to go and bring Spider-Man in ASAP, Rhodey said. Forcefully? Tony quirked a brow. If it comes to it, Rhodey shrugged. I'm not sure how the vigilante will respond, but Steve wants to talk to him first. See if we can get him to come in peacefully. Who's going? Tony asked. Us, Steve, Clint, and Natasha, Rhodey said. We're the air support, in case the little web-slinger decides to take it to higher ground. We're going tomorrow. See if he's around. Tony pressed his lips together, eyes locking onto the image of Peter. Hey, Jones. It'll only be for a couple of hours, Rhodey promised. I know you just got Peter back, and this is poor timing, but we need your help. Yeah, I know, Tony sighed. God, I'm feeling really overprotective now, Rhodes. I don't want my kid out of my sight. Hey, I get it. Rhodey looked up at the image of Peter. We're all going to be protective of him for a while. Have a sleep on it. We can talk more about it in the morning. It's been a big day. Yeah, Tony nodded. Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Platypus. I'll think about it. They stood, Friday switching the television off, and the image of Peter disappeared. I'm really happy for you, Tony, Rhodey said. Really happy. Thanks, Honey Bear. Tony's smile was a little wobbly. I just can't believe he's back. When Peter woke up, he momentarily forgot where he was. It took him a moment to recognize the 4 white walls and the light blue bed sheets that weren't his. He was at the Avengers Tower. He rolled over onto his stomach, squinting in the morning light that filtered into his room and lifted his head, looking for his phone. It's time, Peter grumbled to himself. It is 9:23, Peter. Peter's eyes snapped open and he flew out of bed, landing lightly on his feet and spun around, searching for the voice. Who's there? Peter blinked, heart rate speeding up. His senses weren't going off, but he had learnt that they couldn't always be trusted. My apologies for startling you, Peter, Friday spoke, and Peter smacked himself in the face with his palm. Right, Friday. Sorry. Peter shook his head. Good morning. Good morning, Peter. Friday sounded amused, if that was possible for an AI. Peter wasn't sure, but Tony Stark was a genius, so it was possible. Boss wanted me to tell you when you woke up that they are in the kitchen and breakfast is ready. Peter perked up at the sound of breakfast. Awesome! I'll be there in a minute. I'll just get dressed. "I'll alert boss," Friday said. Changing quickly, Peter exited his bedroom and stepped out into the hallway. He automatically picked up the voices in the kitchen. He could only make out May and Pepper chatting together, and the sound of a coffee machine running. His stomach fluttered nervously as he shuffled down the hall. Yesterday had been a whirlwind of information, and he wasn't sure how today was going to go. Would Tony and Pepper still be excited to see him? "Morning, kid." Tony beamed at him, immediately spotting him as he entered the kitchen. "Morning," Peter replied, the smile coming easily to his face. The twisting of his stomach settled as he saw both Pepper and Tony smiling brightly at him, and he mentally shook himself for feeling insecure. "Hi, sweetie," Pepper greeted. "Did you sleep okay?" "Yeah, great," Peter said. "The bed is really comfortable." "Good." Pepper held out a plate for Peter to take. "Come, have some breakfast." "Yes, please." Peter shuffled forward as his stomach rumbled at the mention of food. There was a spread of food laid out across the kitchen bench, from fresh fruit to cereal and pancakes. Peter picked himself some pancakes, careful not to overload his plate, which would be suspicious. When his plate was full, he took a free stool next to May, who ruffled his hair in a good morning gesture. "Just in time, Platypus," Tony said. "I want you to meet your nephew." Peter, who had just shoved a forkful of pancake into his mouth, started choking as he inhaled sharply as he looked up at the smiling face of Colonel James Rhodey, a.k.a. War Machine, entering the kitchen. He coughed, cheeks puffing up as he tried desperately not to spit his pancake out at the man. May thumped him on the back, and he managed to swallow down the pancake and take a gulping breath of air. "Easy," Tony coached, face set in both concern and amusement. "You all right?" "Fine," Peter gasped. "Oh God, I just choked on a pancake in front of War Machine." "It's okay," Rhodey said. "I've seen you in diapers. It can't get much worse than that." Peter's face dropped in horror. "Oh my God, no, that is so not cool." "So it's cool that I've seen you in diapers?" Tony raised his eyebrow. "Well, yes, I mean no, but it's War Machine. He's so cool," Peter gaped. "You hear that, Tony? I'm cool." Rhodey smirked smugly. "Peter, I'm so glad that you're home." "Hang on," Tony frowned at Peter. "Rhodey isn't cool. I'm the cool one." "If you have to say you're cool, you're not cool." Rhodey grabbed a mug off the counter and moved towards the coffee pot. "Don't worry, Tony." May smirked over her own coffee cup. "Peter is obsessed with Iron Man. You're his favorite Avenger." "May!" Peter spluttered, and Tony beamed. Peter groaned, feeling his cheeks go hot, and he dropped his gaze to his plate and stabbed his fork at his pancake. "I hate you." "No need to feel embarrassed," Tony said, sounding far too smug for Peter's liking. "I'm everyone's favorite Avenger." "Now that I've embarrassed you for the day, I have to head off to work," May said, getting to her feet. "I can call Happy to give you a lift," Tony said, pulling out his phone and quickly tapping at the screen. "Thank you," May nodded. Are you going to come back?" Peter asked hesitantly. "Not tonight," May said softly, smoothing back Peter's curls. "I've got a double shift at the hospital today, and I won't finish till late. But how about I come back tomorrow? For dinner?" She looked up at Pepper and Tony for confirmation. "Excellent," Pepper smiled. "I'll walk you down." May kissed the side of Peter's head. "Have a good day, sweetie." "Yeah, you too. Larb you," Peter said. "Larb you too." May ruffled his hair once more, and then she disappeared with Pepper. "I have to head out too," Rhodey said apologetically. "I've got a few meetings. I'll see you at 3, Tony?" "Yeah," Tony sighed. "I'll see you at 3. Rhodey patted Tony's back and turned to Peter. "It's really good to see you again, Peter. We're really happy you're home. We'll hang out later, and I'll tell you all the embarrassing stories about your dad." Peter grinned. Yeah, that would be awesome." "There are 0 embarrassing stories," Tony said, deadpanned. "Uh-huh, whatever you say." Rhodey rolled his eyes. "See you later, Pete." "What's at 3? Peter asked once Rhodey had left and he'd eaten a few more pancakes from his plate, this time without choking on it. "Unfortunately, I have some Avengers business," Tony sighed. "I have to step out for a couple of hours." Is it a mission? Peter asked, trying not to sound too excited. Judging by Tony's amused smile, he didn't succeed. Not a mission, Tony smirked. Just a little recon. On who? Peter asked. Or is it classified? Please don't let it be classified. Tony barked out a laugh. You really like this stuff, huh? Peter shrugged, cheeks pinking. May hadn't been lying when she told Tony that Peter was a little obsessed with Iron Man. He was Peter's favourite hero out of all of the Avengers, and all this time he'd been worshipping his father. The thought made his stomach swoop and his cheeks heat up even more. What do you think about Spider-Man? Tony asked, taking a single sip of his coffee and watching Peter over the rim of his cup. Peter's heart sped up, and he tried to keep his face looking neutral. Spider-Man? Yeah, he seems cool. He works around Queens, Tony said. Have you ever seen him? Only on YouTube, Peter lied. My friend Ned really likes him. He seems cool, though, helping out the little guy, and his webs look awesome. Yeah, they're pretty neat, Tony agreed, looking thoughtful. I haven't been able to figure them out yet. Something giddy rose up in Peter at the thought that Tony sounded impressed with his design. Maybe if Tony was impressed enough with Spider-Man, he would be okay with the idea that it was his son. Or maybe he wouldn't be. Is that who you're looking for? Peter asked, swallowing thickly as his thoughts churned over. Tony nodded. We just want to have a chat with him, get to know what his deal is. Hey, want to see something cool? Always, Peter grinned. He jumped off his seat when Tony waved at him to follow. He followed Tony down the hallway towards the man's personal lab. Friday turned on the lights as they entered, and Peter couldn't help but look around in awe once again. Entering the lab for the second time was just as amazing and as wonderful as the first. Peter's eyes automatically drifted to the suits that stood proudly on the far wall. They each held scratches and dents from where they had endured hits during a battle. Battles that Peter had watched on TV and YouTube over and over again. It suddenly struck Peter that all this time he'd been watching his father do the impossible. All right, what do you think? Tony asked. Peter tore his gaze away from the suits, and his jaw dropped. Tony stood a little away from his old suits, and stood by a brand new suit, only it wasn't for Iron Man. Is that for Spider-Man? Peter asked, drifting to Tony's side. Yep, Tony said, popping the pea. You made him a suit? Peter frowned, eyes snapping to Tony. Why would you make him a suit? Have you seen the ones that he's swinging around in? Tony laughed. It's not that bad, Peter defended. He was on a budget, and he didn't really know how to sew. It was the best he could do without drawing May's attention to it. It could be much better. Tony pointed at the suit, which is why I've been working on a suit for him. Why? Peter asked quietly. You said that you didn't know him. Tony shrugged. If Spider-Man is really looking after the little guys, like you said, then he should have some proper gear to do it. Wow, Peter breathed, a smile tugging at his lips. That's really nice of you. Tony shrugged, seeming uncomfortable with the emotions. Yeah, well, it's to help him. It's basic at the moment. I'm not 100% sure what powers he has. Peter felt his shoulders relax at the news. Could I help? Tony raised his brows and grinned. Sure, why not? Pepper and Rhodey stood at the door to Tony's lab, both silent as they watched Peter and Tony work together. They looked so much alike as they worked, the conversation flowing easily between the two of them. It's really something, isn't it? Rhodey said, softly smiling at the scene before him. Yeah, Pepper hummed. I can't believe how much he's like Tony. You definitely have your hands full, Rhodey agreed. I wouldn't have it any other way, Pepper sighed. All Tony ever wanted to do was share this with Peter, and he finally gets to. She sniffed and wiped the stray tear that fell down her cheek. She smiled at Rhodey as he squeezed her shoulder. We missed so much of him growing up. He's home now, Rhodey said, and he still has a lot of growing left in him. Unless he's inherited Tony's size, then not so much. Pepper giggled, shooting Rhodey a look. Seriously, though, do you think I can get Tony to leave for a couple of hours? Rhodey asked, looking back at Tony and Peter. You can try, Pepper shrugged. If you do, bring him home in one piece. I don't want to scare Peter. I promise, Rhodey said. We will be backup support only. Okay, Pepper said, her voice a little shaky. Just try and be quick, please. Rhodey nodded. I'll do my best. Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. It's Eleanor, and I hope you're having a lovely day today. I am finally back with a new chapter of Coming Home. I hope you love this one. I had a lot of fun with it. It's nice to see Peter kind of starting to adjust, and also, you know, we're getting a little bit of a hint towards like some plot, some intrigue here of how is he gonna deal with the whole I'm Spider-Man and my dad's Iron Man, but they don't know that. I love it. The drama, the angst, don't worry. It gets good. I love it. But let me know what you thought of this chapter in the comments down below. You know that I love to hear from you guys. Even when I'm not uploading, and I know I haven't been responding to comments as much as I used to, but know that I do read them and I do greatly appreciate them, even if I don't always get the time to reply. But yeah, I hope you all are doing alright. It's been a while. You can tell me one great thing that happened to you this week. Maybe not great. Tell me one thing that happened to you this week that made you smile. Anything. Whatever it is. Because I like to know these things. You could also like the video, you know, if you liked it, and to boost my serotonin levels. And you can also subscribe to be notified whenever I make new videos. I also have a Discord if you want to join that, along with many other things. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I also have a Ko-Fi. It's all linked in the description below, along with the link to the original fic. Please be sure to go give the author love and great comments and support, because they deserve it for writing this masterpiece. Also, I just wanted to say thank you for that whole, 3,000 subscriber thing. You guys are amazing. Honestly, I'm so grateful, and thank you guys so much for having so much patience with me. I know I haven't really been uploading very consistently. A lot of personal stuff going on in my life, but I do still love making these. It is still my passion and my favorite hobby and something that I really care about, and I really appreciate the support, and that you guys never make me feel pressured, or that if I don't upload that you are all going to hate me. So thanks for that. You guys are amazing. Seriously, I love you. Which is why, until I see you again, you better be practicing some self-care. Look after yourself. Please, for the love of God. You need to be drinking your water. Please hydrate. You need it. I know for me, at least in the UK, it is very hot right now. We're in a bit of a heat wave, and you need to be hydrated for things like that, because it's good for you. You'll spat out all your water, and that's not good. Be sure to brush your teeth, and make sure you eat your 5 a day, and get some sleep. Please, I know that you'll be listening, because you think you can tell me in the comments and I won't know? I see you with your comments, and I see what time you leave them. I see that you're listening to these at 2 in the morning. No, go to sleep. Go to sleep now. You need the rest, okay? Because yes, this is a threat, and I will catch you guys laters.